Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. Right, okay, so on today's podcast episode, I have got Lindsay Warren, who I've met several times now, haven't I, Lindsay?
You have indeed. Nice to see you, Liz.
And you. And so Lindsay is the MD and founder of Net Zero Evolution, and that is you're a recruiter, aren't you? That's where your background's been. But thank you ever so much for joining me. We bumped into one another last week at Transport and Energy, so that was great to see you. And you even accompanied me back to the place later, so I didn't have to walk on my own in the dark, which was great. So I really, really appreciated that. So
no problem.
Thank you. So let's start off let's talk a bit about why you founded Net Zero Evolution, and when you founded it, and what kind of sectors you're dealing with.
So, I mean, my background originally was field sales and managing customers, getting to a customer need and finding solutions to help improve businesses. And I took that into recruitment in 2015 originally. The kind of recruitment that we were carrying out was very dirty initially. It was all rail focused and rail and rolling stock, which, while decarbonisation is now beginning to take place in that sector, at the time it was a lot of diesel freight and that kind of thing going on. And I wanted to do something that meant a little bit more to me, something that was going to have a bigger, wider impact rather than just helping businesses. So we started to look at an EV charging market within my previous employer. However, they didn't fancy changing the website, so we had people in big dirty orange boiler suits standing by a train track, and it just wasn't the right fit for the world that we work in. So I approached them about rebranding, and it was decided that wasn't going to happen. So I thought, you know what, I think I can do this better if I just lead on it and do something myself. And Net Zero Evolution was born in April last year.
Fantastic. And I was going to say, I mean, obviously I kind of run my own business as well, and it's and I'm not just saying this to give us both a pat on the back, but it's quite a brave move, isn't it, really, to actually become self-employed?
It is, yeah. I mean, weighing up the risks against the potential rewards was significant, but I think I've read a lot of books over the last sort of 3 or 4 years about how we need to be doing something that has a bigger purpose, and it doesn't always mean it's going to be in decarbonisation or in that kind of area, but you spend most of your time at work, so do something where you've got a long-term goal and you can make a big difference. But yeah, it's working out okay, Liz.
That's
thankfully,
fantastic.
which is good.
I was talking to somebody earlier about kind of like leaving a legacy, something that you can be proud of. And I think this is probably what you're wanting to do. It's definitely what I'm wanting to do anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just something to kind of make a difference then. So what sectors are you specifically dealing with? I know you just said about EV charging. Is it just the EV charging sector, or is it kind of around decarbonisation of transport?
So it's the decarbonisation of transport as a whole, and not only transport, infrastructure as well. Yeah. So on a personal level, the clients that I deal with and the candidates that I recruit are in EV charging. That's where I've got the biggest network and the most knowledge and credibility. But as a business, we are looking at working with ICPs, power generation businesses, wind, solar, and hydrogen and carbon capture even as well. I mean, the government's investing billions of pounds into carbon capture technologies in the coming years, and quite how that's going to go, we don't really know. But if we can support that market in any way, then yeah, we'd be delighted to do so.
So, and what levels of employment are you looking at from to? Is it kind of from entry level to kind of directorship, or where are you?
Yeah, we do cover the whole range, but typically the majority of our work is senior management, middle management and board level. we tend to find that getting the right people in at the top is what's most important at the minute. Businesses need to get their strategy right in this market. We're still not at business as usual, I don't think, in any of the sectors that we operate in, because we're going through such progressive change with it. So the majority of it is at that higher level. Having said that, if a customer needs entry level, even graduates, providing there's enough work there for us to get stuck into, we would cover it all.
So you're right. I was going to say about the rapid change throughout the sector. It is just moving at such a pace, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
it's a bit like watching watching an EV go past, isn't it? Really, you know, the speed that everything is moving at is just constant. So
Yeah.
how do you manage to kind of um, cope with all the so because I was going to talk to you about skills, for
Hmm.
example. You know, how do you manage the kind of the way that the skills need is changing all the time, because it is, isn't it? You know, in a new sector there's got to be new skills. So
Yeah.
how do you cope with all that coming through? It's kind of sifting through, well, what do we need? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it is to an extent, but actually, if we take a step back from that, what we need is for our clients to be open-minded enough to be having conversations about where these candidates would currently be working. We work with some amazing clients who do fantastic work, and the first port of call is always EV charging experience.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, what that creates is a merry-go-round of talent from one business to another, and it doesn't allow the entire organisation, the entire sector, sorry, to grow at the rate that it needs to grow. So we are trying to encourage clients to look at alternative sectors, and there are a number of them depending on the different area of where the individuals work. So we cover engineering, commercial and operations. From an operational perspective, we're looking at people from the likes of street lighting or telecoms and fibre for on-street charging, car parks for your destination charging. There's a number of other sectors we can tap into. But recruitment is about finding a good match and a win-win for the client and the candidate. And if the client's expectation is that the candidate must hit the ground running and must come from an EV charging background, then that hinders our ability to try and bring people in from other sectors.
I can imagine, actually, because it does make sense to bring people in with those transferable skills. I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about your company, you know, the companies out there recognizing that people do have transferable skills, like you
Hmm.
said, coming from street lighting and coming from telecoms. And I've seen people, I know there's people that's moving from telecoms because I worked in telecoms myself as well, you
Okay.
know, and there is that kind of understanding of similar things that are actually have happened in telecoms, and it's all been embedded and it's all worked, you know, because they've had to make it work.
Yeah.
Moving over to a new sector and bringing those skills and that knowledge, that, like you said, it doesn't mean that they can't not jump in feet first, because actually they have got that understanding. It's just
Yeah.
learning the sector itself, isn't it, really?
Exactly right. And we talk a lot about planetary sustainability and saving the
Mm,
planet, but actually, when you consider economic sustainability, when we're hunting for people with that exact experience every single time, the salaries are getting driven up and up and up.
mm,
And actually, businesses would save a lot of money by hiring those core skills of personality, dedication, commitment to making change, and all the transferable technical skills that come with those core human skills. You
yes.
could be looking at paying 75% of the salary you would typically pay, and that gives you money to invest in training and development of that individual. But everybody's rushing at the moment. Everybody's got deadlines that needed to be achieved last week. And the thought of having to bring someone in and them not be quite ready to do everything within the first 6 months, it puts a lot of people off. And look, I'm the same. I've got different thoughts on who we hire in the business, and I need people that have got recruitment experience for certain jobs. But there are others where you can look at personality traits and hire people and train them up.
And you're right, it is that time, but I think companies that are recruiting in, who are in the sector and are recruiting in, if they don't make that, if they don't give that little bit of time to recruit the right person
Hmm.
rather than rushing, they might bring the wrong person in, mightn't they?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's not your fault as a recruiter. That's kind of, and I'm not sorry, the word fault isn't right.
No,
You
no,
know,
yeah, I know what you mean. We would advise that you're better off having a gap in the team rather than having the wrong person,
exactly.
because actually you're giving responsibility to the individual who isn't going to look after that area of the business properly. But yeah, I think the problem with training at the minute is that we don't really have all of the right courses or qualifications available to be able to take somebody out of a transferable sector and put them straight into EV charging. And the biggest challenge from that side of things is when we're recruiting people that need engineering experience,
Right.
because that's a very technical, accredited area that is highly health and safety critical.
Of course.
Commercial operations a little bit easier because
Yeah.
it's more about the core skills. When we come to engineering, we need to make sure we're having the availability on courses and different training and qualifications to be able to right skill people. They've already got good skills, they don't need upskilling. This is about giving them the right skill to be able to do the job effectively.
So how do we do that if we haven't got the right courses? How do we do that? Who currently is developing or who currently are developing courses to fill that? We look at a skills shortage, and you say, we talk about transferable skills, but that, like you said, health and safety critical
Hmm.
requirements mean, they've got to fill those courses. They've got to have somebody writing the courses who've got that background. Who's
Yeah.
doing this at the moment, and how? And if there isn't anybody doing this, or there are few people doing it, how do we actually increase that? How do we make it work, and how do we fill all these skills gaps?
Yeah, that's the million dollar question, I guess. I think there's a lot of work going on in Coventry in terms of battery technology, and courses for people to become battery technicians now.
Yes.
You've got the City and Guilds course, which is for electric vehicle charging, but actually that alone doesn't really give the full technical skills. It's kind of an add-on to previous qualifications.
Mm.
There are a lot of infrastructure and transport businesses that have in-house apprenticeships where they train people up, but unfortunately, these businesses aren't EV charging specific.
Mm.
So when civils work needs to be carried out, or when cables need to be connected and charge points need to be commissioned, we tend to utilise businesses that also have multi-million pound construction things happening, and the EV charging side isn't necessarily prioritised. That's
Mm.
what is giving us the impression of the skill shortage and the delays in actually getting charge points connected.
Mm.
There's a lot of contracts out there getting signed, private sector. The Levi funding is going to see a lot more rolling out for public sector soon as well. I'm concerned that all these contracts are going to get signed and the chargers aren't going to be going in the ground for 12 months, 18 months, 2 or 3 years in some places, because the subcontractors are prioritising other work that is already booked in and ready to go.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think to just to go back and answer your question a bit more succinctly then in terms of how we solve it, I think we need an industry collaboration. I mean, we look at the likes of Charge UK, for example. If we had some kind of tie-up between everybody, which starts with a schools outreach, which is something that I'm quite
Yeah.
passionate about as well, we can look to not only develop the right courses, but actually give the students and give children visibility of what they can become and the big difference they can make to the planet in our sector. And we need people to want to join it before we think about how they're going to join it.
Absolutely. Oh, I totally agree. I think there is so many. There's there's so much misinformation. I always say this. There's so much misinformation out there. But on the other side, kids in schools are currently talking to their parents about, asking. I've heard this numerous times about, what are you doing to save our planet?
Hmm.
And that's what gets parents thinking about it. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's tying all that up, isn't it? It's actually looking at the courses, looking at the schools,
Hmm.
what. So at the moment, my son, who's doing in his second year of A levels, he's currently doing an NEA, which is in geography, and he chose air pollution.
Nice.
But that was him. I mean, I talked to him about this. I
Yeah.
talked to him about air pollution, and obviously, me and you, when we were both at Transport and Energy last week, and there was Ella's mum, who's so
Yeah.
Rosamond, Ella's mum, who is actually trying to introduce Ella's law about air pollution, and
Hmm.
I shared that article with him because he needs to actually do extra reading and stuff like that. But it's about it, James wouldn't have known about this or thought about it probably if it hadn't been me kind of influencing, and it just feels that there just needs to be some kind of push,
Yeah.
a holistic push from
Well,
government, from local authorities, in business, to actually kind of get kids in schools understanding about the sectors, what the possibilities are,
yeah,
and
100% agree. And I think James is one of the lucky ones who's had that from you at home then, because I would I would suggest that there are many, many more children who don't get that from their parents, actually, because it is much more about the youth and children that are growing up now that kind of understand that we need to start saving the planet. But what they don't think about is how they can contribute in different areas. If you love cars, you can save the planet and work in electric vehicles. You know, if you love engineering, you can save the planet and get involved with wind farms or solar or power generation in some other way. It's about tying up the passions together rather than just thinking, how do I get a job that can support decarbonisation? And many of them don't know the routes to take to that anyway. When the children get to year 9, for example, they look at choosing their options for GCSEs. Well,
yeah,
how do they know what GCSEs to take, depending on what they might want to do when they leave school? Now, you take a step back from that, most children, me included, didn't have a clue what they wanted to do in year 9. No,
yeah,
absolutely no clue.
we
So
didn't.
just giving visibility to the options is going to, even if we get 1% of the students in secondary schools thinking, do you know what, that is going to be something that I'd like to do, that 1% will solve the entire skills crisis.
It would be so brilliant to actually see some kind of campaign or something like that to bring this information to the
Yeah,
doors of schools and colleges, and you know and even into universities and things like that, so that
yeah,
people recognize what is out there in this sector. But I think we've there's so much going on in the sector anyway, isn't there? Because so
hmm
I was actually going to ask you, so because we haven't quite touched on it in this way, so why do you think someone would want to retrain from a current sector
yeah,
into a new sector? What do you think? What would they see? I mean, we could look at, for example, we could look at the fossil fuel sector,
hmm
because there's going to have to be people moving from fossil fuels across, isn't there?
there is.
Over the years to come.
Yeah.
What would the EV and the electrification sector, what are we offering? What is the sector offering that is kind of actually, provide what that person needs for retraining?
I think if we look at the fossil fuels sector, there are two person types within that sector at the minute. Those that love it and believe that we're all talking absolute nonsense. And I think we don't want those people in our sector anyway, if I'm honest. You've then got those that actually didn't really have much of a choice. It wasn't really thought about. This is a great opportunity where they earn good money, a lot of them in that space, and continue to do so to provide for their families. What we need to be doing is to educating those people as well. It's not just about the students, it's about demonstrating to them that there are opportunities where they can utilise their skills in a much more compassionate and an environment with much more longevity.
Yeah.
The fossil fuels aren't going to be around forever, and the fact that our renewable energy supply is increasing every quarter, there's a greater percentage of renewable power that's used to power this country. Even the ones that aren't the most intelligent and love fossil fuels so much, they must realise that that's coming to an end. And that they need to make the move now. But it's about awareness. I mean, how do we make those people aware? Their employers certainly aren't going to be running courses or programs on how to make a change. They're going to be encouraged to be sticking at doing what they're doing now. So, yeah, that's tougher, in my opinion, than the schools outreach. And I think you touched on universities there as well. A lot of big businesses do go into universities and look for graduates and try and encourage them into employment. There's also a lot of companies that would go to the schools fairs, so sort of years 10 and 11 to get them into the apprenticeship side of things. I think the biggest area we're lacking is slightly before that. It's the inspirational age that we need. But yeah, the government and industry need to have some kind of joined up approach in how to transition the fossil fuel workers into the renewable and EV markets.
Because, like I say, this gap. Right, so I'll ask you this question. So how many jobs? Because I don't know what if there's any stats on this. How many jobs do you think there will be in the electrification sector? I know it could be, you know, how long's a piece of string, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It is a little bit. I mean, it varies, and the numbers that come out are actually potentially skewed because it's the total over 15, 20 years. But you're looking at somewhere around 200,000 in terms of jobs that are going to become available. Now, we would expect that about 60% of those are going to be filled by people that are still at school at the moment, so over the next 15 to 20 years. The other 40%, they need to be filled by people that are already out in the working world. It's just a minefield in terms of how we're going to do it. And the challenge is always that we don't get results quickly when trying to solve this kind of problem. Results that happen quickly and problems that can be solved next week and next month tend to get the focus all of the time because we'll worry about that when the problem happens. But the problem's happening now. So we need to do things about it now to make sure that we're not having the same conversation in 2030.
Let's just hope that doesn't happen, because we do need to. I know obviously we've had that we've had the extension of kind of, you know, the petrol and diesel manufactured, you know, so, but I mean, everybody who's already in the sector is already pushing as if it was not going to be any change anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, well, with the ZEV mandate, the manufacturers are still going to be fined if they don't sell 80% of fully battery electric vehicles by 2030. But actually what that's done is for the parents that are at home watching the news and for the kids, they all think, well, I've got another 5 years, doesn't matter, and it's given the impression that it's not as important as it is. It was for votes, in my opinion, but we won't get all political on the podcast so much.
Yeah. But you're right, it's about that public perception, isn't it? The public perception has changed because of the way that, you know, that it's been moved, and actually he was saying, you know, the Prime Minister was saying kind of a week beforehand that he wasn't going to move the goalposts, wasn't he? And then obviously some pressure from various places made that change. But yes, let's not go into that. That's not what we're here to talk about. But so if you kind of mentioned, we talked about collaboration, and if we talk about collaboration and the government away from what we've just said, you know, how can we? So you've said about Charge UK. Are there any other areas of kind of collaboration? Because obviously Charge UK can try and put a little bit of pressure on government to actually make some changes when we talk about skills shortages and things like that, and training and stuff like that. But it feels to me a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, you know, like you've got a certain number of pieces at the moment that are there, and at the moment you can't quite find the other, you know, the rest of the pieces. What do you feel needs to happen in order for everybody to kind of start collaborating through this?
Well, I think we need certainty on the government's plans and what they can support with in terms of new courses and developing the the areas that are going to solve the skills shortage. I'm working on a skills report at the minute with Matthew Adams from the Renewable Energy Association alongside Mark Constable from Trojan Energy. Once we put that together, that's going to be presented back to government, and we can hopefully get some kind of progress from them on where things might go. But that's only going to be 20%, I think, of the solution. The other 80% does need to come from industry. I think what we need is a joined up approach with geographical areas of commitment from different businesses who can take the long-term view on the time being spent now educating and giving exposure to the kids about the kind of work that we're going to be doing in terms for the long-term benefit, so that we get people as they're growing up that want to join our sector. That's where the biggest impact is going to be. Government aren't going to do enough. Unfortunately, they're just going to hope that people want to do it and who knows, just pass the buck on to industry. But the reason I mentioned Charge UK is because that is a consortium of some of the biggest names of businesses in the space, yes, with what seems like a significant budget that's going to be spent on rolling out charge points. Yes. And the percentage of that budget that could be used to solve this kind of challenge and to get people into schools is so minute. But the impact it could have is enormous. So yeah, I think that's where we need to be. But I'm on a bit of at the minute it's a one-man mission, to be honest with you, Liz, but I am having conversations with a number of businesses that love the idea of getting in front of the schools at the younger age to try and talk about the industries. So I'm slowly building up a bit of a network of people that are going to support and go out and have the conversations. If there's anybody else listening that wants to get involved, just give me a shout and we'll work something out.
That sounds, do you know, it wasn't until you just literally said about that budget, that Charge UK budget, because I wrote about it last week, it's something like 7 billion.
Yeah, around that, 6 or 7 billion, yeah.
7 billion, but they've actually committed to the charging infrastructure, you know, for the charging network across the members of Charge UK. Like you said, a fraction of that, if that went towards filling those gaps and getting that information out there, my God.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, you take 100,000 out of that budget, you could employ somebody who's experienced in schools outreach, and you can employ 2 administrators to coordinate everything. Yeah. And those 3 people could, on a full-time basis, be responsible for reaching out to businesses and coordinating with schools and getting things going. Not a not-for-profit organisation that just puts intelligent people who are passionate about decarbonisation, the transportation, the electrification of transport in front of the schools. 100 grand out of that budget, and we'd be well on the way to getting something really, really big and important on the way.
That is a really, really good idea, and I think I would, anybody who is going, you know, is part of Charge UK, that's listening to this or watching, then I think Lindsay is onto an absolute winner there. It's a conversation worth having with kind of.
I'll update you in 6 months, but they're conversations that I'm trying to have as we speak.
Fantastic. So I was going to say as well that you are an enterprise advisor for the CIPD.
Yep.
Do you want to explain a little bit about what that is and what
you're doing? So it all ties in with the schools outreach program. I mean, the 3, I've got 2 stepdaughters and a daughter that came up to leaving school time and they don't know what they want to do, and made me remember, of course, that actually when I was at school it was the same. So as an enterprise advisor, I volunteer in a local school just to try and help coordinate anybody from any sector that can come in and try and talk to kids about future careers and where they would like to go. So I've got vet businesses into the school, we've got construction, we've got sort of hospitality and retail, and it's about just exposing the kids again to different jobs that they could have when they get older. And it was doing that initially for that one independent school that really made me think about how we could make something much bigger for our sector. But I love doing it. It's just really, really rewarding seeing that actually the students now are going to make a decision on what they want to do in the future based on the connections and the links that I've been able to bring in for them.
That's fantastic. I was just going to say to you and to also anybody watching and listening, he's not going to say anything, but my husband, but so you know that my husband is a professor of climate science. Part
Yeah.
of his role at the University of Reading is outreach.
Okay.
So to yourself, Lindsay, if
Hmm.
you know, I can always put you in contact with him
Yeah, that'd be
on,
great.
you know, and also anybody who's watching and listening, if you know, Richard Allan, my husband, is that's part of what is meant to do. He was at the EV Cafe Partners Day, and he was on the EV Cafe webinar fairly recently as well. So because that's the other thing I think on the climate change side of things. It's funny, I was listening to a podcast, one of the Fully Charged podcasts recently with, you know, with Robert Llewellyn, and he was actually interviewing one of my husband's colleagues,
Yeah.
um, and he said, you know, you use the words climate change and people switch off.
Mm.
Well, hopefully not at school.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to sort of comprehend what it actually means to them when we're talking about it. I think the students probably walk out the room and think as an individual, like, I'm not going to be able to save the world, so they forget about it after an hour or so. And I think that's why we do need to break it down into bite-sized role types and individual contributions that they can make. Lots of us, there's more and more and more people campaigning for climate change and understanding the problem tomorrow than there is today. And every day, the continuous perpetuation of our voice is going to just push everything in the right direction. I think we'll be okay, to be honest. There's plenty of people doing lots and lots of exciting things. And if it comes to it, and the government aren't getting involved, they'll probably end up getting overthrown like they would have done hundreds of years ago. But yeah, I think the schools thing's just huge, Liz, to be honest. And I'm glad we've spoken about that quite a lot today, more so than recruitment, because the reason I'm in this space is to help help businesses expand and get the right people, and they're not going to be able to do that without the future generations.
Oh no, not at all. And actually, yeah, you know, recruitment is what you do, but like you said, it is about teaching people early on and
Mm.
guiding them and letting them, because you know, like you said, I didn't have a clue. You know, when I you know, you said about you leaving school, I didn't have a flipping clue about what I wanted to do. I'm only
No.
just learning about it now. But you know, but it's difficult for kids, isn't it, to
Yeah.
actually, you know, like I say, I know my son wants to study biology at university. Doesn't know
Hmm.
what he wants on the other side, job wise.
Yeah.
You know, he just knows that he finds that interesting, and that's what he wants to study. So, but as far as I'm concerned at the moment, great. At least he knows that that's what he wants to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
But kind of further down the line, yeah. Oh, sorry, further back even, if school had actually provided him with some of the background and some information about potential jobs, and he is having that in his current school where he's studying his A levels.
Good.
You know, they're getting people coming in talking about apprenticeships and different, you know, coming from different companies.
Hmm.
But it's about, maybe it is about our sector, you
Yeah.
know, about this sector actually kind of going, right, okay, you know, like you said, come
Yeah.
on, Charge UK, let's get some people who can go out and shout and, you know, kind of be more
Yeah.
be vocal about, to schools and colleges and unis, about what's happening,
Yeah.
what's being developed.
A very, very small percentage of kids are going to choose their options or choose their A levels based on what they're going to be doing when they're 30.
Yeah.
Actually, they choose subjects that they love or they like and that they're good at, or that their parents have encouraged them to do. And what we need to be looking at is all of the different qualifications and GCSEs and A levels that take place. How can we link those to what we do in our sector? And
Mhm.
actually, that's then at the point when we will be going out and talking to students that are already doing something and might have never thought that they could join the EV charging space from the A levels that they're doing.
Exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? And
Yeah.
at the moment, we don't know what the jobs of the future will be, do we?
No.
I mean, because of the pace of change, you
Hmm.
know, everything's happening. You know, at the moment, for example, all the charging infrastructure that we've got
Yeah.
is at a certain speed, isn't it? So we've got you've got rapid chargers, you've got slow chargers, rapid chargers, ultra rapid chargers, etc., etc. All the
Hmm.
names that everybody gets confused with, you know. But in 10 years' time, there will be some, we will have some very, very probably different landscape, won't we? We'll have
Yeah.
people who will have more people on board who think the same way as
Hmm.
we do currently. We're going to have new jobs that, say like my son will have, in 10 years time, he will have been in the jobs market for a few years. God knows
Yeah.
what he'll be doing. But, I'll get him to shout you.
Yeah.
But, so there's lots of things that are actually going to grow out of all of this, isn't there?
100%. I mean, I've got a call this afternoon, for example, with an organisation that are developing mobile charging units for electric aircrafts. So what we're talking about now is that electric aircrafts won't have any downtime by charging on the ground. These drones and mobile charging units are going to somehow link up with it while it's in flight to give it a bit of a charge, then separate and come back down to the charging pod again. I mean, do you know what I mean? How can we be talking about stuff like that? It's crazy. But yeah, things are changing really quickly, for the better in lots of areas.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, and I've said this to people that I'm friends with and people that I know, putting climate change aside for a minute, because that is bloody important.
Hmm.
Actually, and we're going back to transportation. The fact that we are currently breathing in, what is it, nitrogen oxide or nitrous oxide? I can't remember. All those pollutants.
Yeah.
When we're walking around, our kids are breathing them in. Yes, there might be a little bit of tire particulates coming from EVs and, electric, but actually, come on, let's have a look at the reduction in the air pollution so that,
Yeah.
when we were listening to Transport and Energy last week, when we were listening to Ella's mum, Rosamond, and she said, that during lockdown, do you remember she basically
Yeah.
said during lockdown, the only time that was the only time, the very first lockdown, that somebody didn't die from an asthma-related, it was
Yeah.
air pollution, asthma-related death.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the only
Amazing.
time. We just need to stop. We just need to actually kind of reduce the amount of air pollution that's out there, don't we?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And there's a lot of discussion about the tailpipe emissions compared to the entire life and production of the vehicle. And people will see lots of articles out there about the fact that there is still carbon emitted when producing these electric vehicles. But actually, that is getting less and less and less and less as well as time goes on. And you've got to start somewhere, I mean, and for example, petrol stations didn't appear out of nowhere when we went from the horse to the car.
Exactly.
It's a transition. Things need to take a little bit of time.
Exactly. It's absolutely right. So, what is next on your agenda? So we met originally, and it was very. Did we actually meet? I saw you at the London to Brighton to Paris EV rally.
Yes.
You were in Brighton, and I was in Brighton. Did you actually win an award that day? Did you
I
win
did,
something?
yes. So, saloon class was the winner for the most efficient journey from London to Brighton, and then overall from London to Paris as well.
Oh my God. So right, okay. So what were you driving?
I was driving an Ioniq Premium.
Same as we've got. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my God. Oh
And
God,
I
please
was,
tell me how many miles per kilowatt hour did you get?
I should have looked this up, shouldn't I, before today? But
No, don't
I
worry.
think it was nearly 6
Did
miles
you?
per kilowatt hour, something like that. It was a 38 kilowatt hour battery.
Yeah, same as we've
And we
got.
started in Westminster with 93%.
Yeah.
And we didn't charge at all until we got to Paris. And I was pushing it though. I was so determined. By the time we'd got close to the end line, we were on like -4 miles left in the battery. And my partner Christy was panicking, saying, "Oh, you've got to pull over and charge." I'm like, "No, we're going to get there," and we did. We sort of trickled in and found a charge in Paris, but I think that the cost of that journey was less than £2 per passenger.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable.
And this is the thing. No,
Mm.
so I interviewed Kevin Booker recently, and he's managed to get something like, I think it was 7.8 miles per kilowatt hour out of
Yeah.
an Ioniq as well. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know whether I'm ever going to manage to get that. I think I've got a 5.7 out of it so far, but I've only had it 4 months.
Yeah.
So maybe are you gonna do? I don't know what the landscape is of the rallies. Are you gonna do something next year if you get an opportunity to?
Yeah, I think there's the London to Paris. There's another good one that happens as well, isn't there? The EV rally,
The
which
Green
is
Fleet.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called now, but I've got some notes somewhere of 2 or 3 I'd like to take part in if I can. Just it all depends how busy we are and whether or not I'm flat out delivering to client requirements, which is a story of my life on most weekly basis, to be fair.
Yes, but that's good because that means your business is working.
Of course it is, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, listen, it's been a joy talking to you, Lindsay. I'm really pleased with, everything that you're doing is just fantastic.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate it.
And the outreach stuff, let's just fingers crossed that Charge UK and the government and we, and businesses in general start recognising that where we need to be looking are schools, colleges, universities, and actually making sure that that our landscape moving forward with jobs is filled from those places. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Great talking to you. Cheers.
So I hope you've all enjoyed listening and watching. I will share all of Lindsay's web address and all the links and stuff like that in the show notes. So thank you ever so much. Thanks to Lindsay. Thanks for you guys for watching and listening. And I shall see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching this episode of Electric Evolution. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay connected with us. And if you're inspired by our journey towards a sustainable future and want to support our mission on a monthly basis, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Your support really helps us to bring the latest insights and discussions in the world of clean energy, electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging and sustainability to you. If a regular subscription isn't what you're looking for, you can always consider buying us a coffee. Just head over to www.buymeacoffee.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Every cup helps us to keep the electric evolution moving forwards. And if you're curious about our work in the EV infrastructure sector at Full Circle Continuous Improvement, why not visit us at www.fullcircleci.co.uk to find out more. And if you want to send me a message, you can always email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. And finally, please don't forget to share this podcast if it sparked your interest. And let's keep spreading the word about all of these topics that we're covering. So, until next time, see you soon. Bye!